McMurdo silver masterpiece. That works quite well, that we can demonstrate. Like the Cape Art, beautiful, beautiful cabinet work. And if you invite people to keep looking around, you'll see all of the chrome plating. So this was kind of a trademark of large companies like Scott and McMurdo Silver. They took so much pride in their radios that they would chrome plate everything. So here's a Scott, for example. Epitome of the Art Deco period with chrome and, you know, the arched look to the cabinet and the curves. So this is all Art Deco period. Very classic receivers. This is a Philco Cathedral. We started out, you know, kind of a classic design that was popular for many, many years in the cathedral fashion. We started out, of course, with radios. Were kind of tabletop mounted like this, but as they got bigger speakers and better sound, they found they needed more room for the speakers. And we started to get larger pieces of furniture, console radios that could had both better performance and nicer pieces of furniture that could fit in the living room. When you go back to the early radios of 1920s, when they were, you know, all that black, hard rubber panels and looked pretty ugly, they didn't sit in the living room too well. But later on, as we perfected the radios, they were also perfected as a nicer piece of furniture, including interesting models like this that were designed to fit in the corner of the room, hence the shape that it's in. So be sure to you know, show these to different people as they go by. This is a interesting water-cooled tube, different varieties. These tubes got so hot in their normal operation that they had to be submerged in a bath of quickly running water to cool off the anode of the tube. Okay, we're on the third floor of the museum now. Just come up the stairs and did a sharp left-hand turn. We're looking at the early amateur exhibit. This is a 1938 ham transmitter, pretty typical, 50 watter, 2 tubes driving a 50 watter, and it's crystal controlled. So this is a very, very early crystal controlled transmitter. Back when crystals cost $15, $20, they were very pricey. And by the way, this was built by AWA, and some of you may recognize that call as the pre-war call of Bruce Kelly. So this is a transmitter built by Bruce. And here's a Silver Marshall receiver, very typical of the receivers of the period. Plug-in coils, of course, and regenerative. Worked very well. Some people might be interested in the QSL cards. There's a lot of interesting things here. Deleted countries that don't exist anymore. British North Borneo, Mashari Island. There's a lot of really interesting stuff. Moving over here, we have a very important part of the amateur history, and that's the novice program. So this is a very early novice transmitter, typical of what the embodiment of a novice class, and that was people would homebrew their own equipment. So here's early license manuals focused on novice. And interesting enough, this receiver and transmitter was built by a novice in Webster, New York in 1957. And he went on to be a hand for some 30 years. And this is the only receiver and transmitter he ever had. He never upgraded, stayed a novice as soon as you could do that, and stayed on the air with that. Here's his logbook. He has thousands of contacts with his homebrew, probably not more than 10-watt radio and a regenerative receiver. So good for him. Really embodied the early history. Here is some Paragon equipment that was amateur, very early shortwave, and very expensive. So if you were a very well-to-do amateur in the mid-1920s, you would have Paragon equipment. We have a motor generator. Here's a transmitting set with a carbon microphone. So it's a very early equipment. Again, very expensive. Moving on into the transmitter room, there's 4 pieces of equipment we'd like to demonstrate here. One is the 1911-1912 time period hobbyist type transmitter setup. The hobbyist would make this from a Ford spark coil, a capacitor made with glass plates from your father's photograph collection. So these are photographic glass plates separated by tinfoil. A loose coupler, homemade undoubtedly, and with that you could set up a transceiver. The transmitter is a single spark, so demonstrate that. And if you want to, have people listen to it, because it is a receiver. And the receiver is an exact, of course, replication of what a spark transmitter sounds like. So this is probably the only opportunity anybody will ever hear a real spark transmitter. Fixed gap, of course. This predates November 1912, when they started licensing ham radio operators. So this is a hobbyist, unlicensed, and very often caused interference with ships and what have you. If you're near a port, they really hated the amateurs, because they would just get on the air and talk their 1 or 2 blocks to their buddy and interfere with all kinds of ships that in port and what have you. So really, amateurs were not loved for the playing that they did, because everybody was on the same frequency. If you wanted to transmit further than a block or 2, you just made everything bigger and made more power. So this is a 1/4 kilowatt, 250 watt rotary spark gap. Instead of a fixed gap, we now have a rotary gap, and that did 2 things. It increased the frequency of the audio part that you're going here, the number of sparks per second, if you will, and it cooled off the contacts, which started to become very important, because they get very hot. So you can turn this on with this switch. I should say it gets a little noisy, but that's all right.